Well, Mandy, thank you
Um,
so much for helping with my project. I was wondering if you could say a little bit about yourself.
sure. I I guess we met through, we'll say like Stephen. We went to high school together. I was originally born in Ohio and then lived in Michigan because my parents worked in the auto industry. I lived in China for a bit when I was little, and then that's ended up going to Exeter. And now I work in the Bay Area on Google Scholar, so on like um making sure research papers are accessible to people. And like I think it also manages like profiles for scholars. So yeah.
I'm just starting a master's program at Rice University, so I think I'll be one of your users
Oh, awesome. Cool. What are you studying?
as space studies.
Oh, is there like a program called Space Studies?
There is, yeah. And like I'm taking one class this semester. It's the space environment and its effects on spacecraft. So we're like studying like, solar radiation and the thermal environment and,
Oh,
micrometeors and, kind of like all the things that you had to consider. So it's kind of
oh,
neat.
that's neat.
So
Like,
Monday's my first class tomorrow. So I'm kind of looking forward to it.
cool.
Well, I guess, and this may feel like a silly question, but it's like the standard question I ask everybody. Did you know that NASA is planning to send astronauts back to the moon?
Yes, right now, but for a few weeks ago, no. And I only knew because you told me a few weeks ago. But I guess
Well,
not including that, I didn't know about it.
so I guess since you found out, what have you thought about it? Do you think it's a good thing, or do you think maybe it's a bad thing?
Hmm.
Where do you think?
I guess if they are doing it, it must be for a good reason. I think the good things are like it creates more like public interest in space travel. Um, that could be potentially good if there are like, useful aspects of it. I think it is something that kind of grabs your attention and like especially it makes us think like, oh, our government is doing things that are good. Not like I think most media headlines can be a little bit depressing. But this one's kind of like, oh, like when you're a kid, you hear about stuff where you're like, I think especially when we were kids, there was a lot more space exploration type thing happening. I think from my knowledge, at least like visiting other planets we haven't visited or moons we haven't visited like as human, either the moon or nearby planets in a long time. I don't know if actually I think we've never visited nearby planets as humans, but I don't know too much about space travel, so you can correct me on that. I think Elon's had previously been talking about it a bunch, but I haven't heard much on it lately. But yeah, I think it is potentially something that could lead to, I don't know, like some breakthrough in science or technology, or like we can learn a lot from exploring different planets. And then for the negatives, I guess if it's probably really expensive to do so, and maybe there's a lot of like resources that we have to dedicate to it. But if NASA has probably done like the pros and cons, so I'm hoping that means the pros are outweighing the cons.
When you think about the future of humanity, like 200 years out in the future, what do you think about it? I mean, how do you imagine it being?
Hmm. Yeah, I think stuff like that is pretty hard to predict, and I wouldn't be confident in my personal prediction just because there's a lot of like, hmm, the world's really complicated and changes in ways that a single person can't predict.
Well,
I
how about
would,
I ask you an easier question that might be more personal?
yeah.
If you could create a future that was achievable in the next 200 years, what would that
Mhm.
future look like?
Mm, Um, hmm. I feel like I'm bad at answering questions like this because I don't have a lot of the information, but based on my best guess right now, I would say a lot of the big changes in our society have to do with like humanity's at a point where sometimes the challenges that we face or the problems that we have to solve require a lot of like foresight or like long-term or extremely long-term thinking. And the way we've operated in the past or the way that governments or societies are set up are such that like for instance like in America politicians that sometimes serve like shorter terms or have like other agendas are like uh making more short-term decisions to get reelected. But I think the biggest challenges that we face in the future, like climate change or making sure that we have like a stable economy or population growth, infrastructure, things like that require, and maybe even like space travel, or like designing the infrastructure that we need for our future require like long-term thinking on the scale of like maybe even several lifetimes, like 200 years. And um, I really hope that if I were to decide that we would be able to somehow work toward like a solution where humanity can plan for things on a grander scale for our species somehow. I think reading science fiction like Dune is pretty inspiring. I don't know if you've read it or seen the movie, but um, they have, I mean, they solve this problem a little bit through like societies like the Bene Gesserit. I don't know if that is realistic, but I can see they why who's the author? I have the book actually behind me. Um, but I can see why who's the author of Dude again? Do you remember?
Frank Hubert.
Yes. Wait, is that true? Breaker. Yeah.
Frank Hubert. I think that's true.
Oh,
Hubert is the last name, and then Frank
oh,
is the first name.
yeah.
I'm pretty
So
sure. You're talking about Dune, the one with the spice planet and the
yeah,
Atreides and the yeah, yeah.
yeah. Because like if I think futuristic society, a lot of times it has to do with like space travel or like advanced technology, and then with advanced technology society and the way that we run ourselves has to kind of change as well. And it's interesting, definitely thinking about how society and people might change as a result of changing technology or changing times.
It is. I mean, often, like if you look at Star Wars is another one. And I guess you see this a little bit in Dune where you have like these people with like, develop a lot of self-control and power through that self-control to like influence the world around them. I mean, I feel kind of like, you know, maybe that's part of the future. It's like
Yeah,
a whole bunch of like the Jedi people in Star Wars as an example, or the um the Paul Atreides and the um Dune as an example.
yeah, because there's a common thread of like the ability to control short-term impulses for your own good or maybe the good of your community beyond that. Yeah, I guess more longer term thinking for the future could be would be something that I hope society can work toward.
Now, do you think in 200 years we have people actually living on other planets, like on the moon and Mars, and going about their lives, or do you think it'd take longer, or is it even impossible?
I think I'm not sure about like the viability, the science behind that. I guess my first thought would be like, oh, I guess we have to create some sort of atmosphere, or at least like mini atmosphere first. Um, I guess technology is advancing pretty rapidly, so I can definitely see a world where we um, achieve that in some form. It will, if we do, probably won't be something that it won't probably happen in the way that we think that it might. Um, but yeah, I guess my question is like, why, what would be the purpose of having like people live on the moon or on other planets? Would it be like
Well,
society or
that is a,
sorry?
oh, could you say that again?
Oh, I was saying like what would be the purpose and um would you envision like small societies or like a larger group of people or like more like scientific expeditions, like small colonies of scientific expeditions similar to like Antarctica or something?
Oh, I kind of envision having metropolises on these places, like with millions of people and lots of commerce between them and lots of people in space and just a huge uh, a, a huge group of people. But I mean, I think the universe is so huge that, and as far as we know, we're the only living intelligent beings in the universe. I mean, I kind of see it as sort of our responsibility to go out there and bring it all to life, as it were.
That's
Now, what do
cool.
you
I
think?
guess. Um, I guess I can't really. It's really hard for people to predict the future, so I wouldn't have very high confidence in any like predictions. I think that sounds like a cool society, and if we were able to achieve that, and it like made sense for humanity to like move there, I think it would be super cool. Um, I've definitely read a lot of like sci-fi books that talk about space travel, like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and Dune are some of my favorite books. I think it's really cool. Um, I think my main reservation would be like the cost of doing something like that. Like right now, like with the technology that we have, it costs a lot of like resources, like money or like gas, um, fuel mostly, and then to just venture into space. Um, and I guess the benefit and trade-offs of like investing that back into like versus like life in other places. But I think there's a lot, like space is really big. There's a lot out there that isn't Earth. And it seems like very likely that we would be able to learn a lot from other planets or moons or I don't know, foreign objects like asteroids or whatnot. Like you're learning about like the space environment class. So I think it seems like it makes sense to like focus like some of our resources towards like Earth and the people that live there here now and like developing ourselves here and then have some like exploratory budget to like explore and see what we can find and it's like we don't really know what we don't know. So like I can definitely see a future where we're like we find something uh like I don't know, some sort of like space exploration or like moon exploration helps us develop some new technology. We learn like, oh, there's some resource here like spice that's really useful for us. Maybe that's like a good reason to like colonize this area or like send scientists here or something like that. Um, yeah, so I guess I personally don't really know enough about like the motives of people or like NASA or the government or people that would want to colonize the moon or Mars. So yeah, I guess just out of curiosity, um, what would be like the benefit of colonizing the moon or Mars? Um,
Uh, well, I guess one benefit is having multiple groups of people on different planetary bodies, so that if you had something that impacted one of those groups of people, like a pandemic or nuclear war, or a huge asteroid strike, that you would have some, kind of like insurance policy of having people in other places and life in other places. Another benefit, I think, is as we have humans living their daily lives in different, like gravity fields, different points in the solar system, I think they're going to observe things that humanity's not observed before. And I think that will trigger a new perspective on the physical universe, and maybe we'll find something as fundamental as electromagnetism, which was only discovered a couple hundred years ago, and it's like the basis for radio and TV and so much of our technology. And I mean, anyway, so that's kind of like what I think, and I think we should just do it just to do it. Like I think it's it's useful in and of itself. Just uh, just kind of like any type of exploration that, um, it's the grand adventure, the thing that entertains us and challenges us and pushes us and helps us to grow.
yeah, I think that's a good point. Like the um, Earth has some, or humanity has some so like catastrophic, like existential threats, and diversifying could be helpful. And then, yeah, I definitely agree that it seems like there's so much out there, and it seems like we have so much to possibly learn that it's like we probably won't know, like, we don't know all of the possibilities that are out there and the things that we can like learn from outer space, or the things that we could potentially like use to help ourselves. um unless we do some like exploration first, like in Civ when you like scout out, you do like balance the exploration and exploitation. um yeah, and it's been a long time since humans have um been on the moon or another planet too, so I think they've been in the ISS,
Yeah,
but not.
1972.
Oh,
That's
that's
true.
around.
1972 was the last time
Yeah.
people were on the moon, was 1972, so over 50 years ago. And
Oh,
the ISS has been continuously inhabited since, um, I think it's like November 2nd of 2000. So
wow. Okay. And we do you know the kinds of things that we've learned from uh astronauts in the ISS? I know we've
well,
like there must be something like space on the body and stuff like that.
we have we've
Mhm.
learned that being in that weightless environment is very challenging for the human body, and that the best kind of countermeasure is 2 hours of exercise a day. Weight training and running on a treadmill. We've also did like a twin study where we had identical
Oh,
twins and one astronaut in space and another one here on Earth, and then compared sort of like their biological characteristics before and during and after, to kind of see these are two uh, genetically identical individuals. What kind of effects does that have on them? And you know, we've also done a lot of studies on uh, creating like alloys in space. Sometimes you mix a heavier metal with a lighter metal, and here on Earth you get sedimentation. Um,
hmm.
and so it gets unevenly distributed, the two metals together. But in free fall, where there's no force causing them to settle, you can get a more even distribution. So kind of trying to see what effect that has in terms of the properties of those materials. I was I was looking at um, you know, when you heat up materials, generally speaking, they expand, and when you cool them down, generally speaking, they contract. But there's some materials that exist that actually perform the exact opposite. Like in certain temperature ranges, when you heat them up, they actually start to contract, and whenever you cool them off, they start to expand. And so
Oh,
there's a thought that if you could make the right mixture of the right materials, you could create a material that would neither expand nor contract, because the two would cancel each other out, which is kind of neat to think about, because you know then you don't have to worry about like your bridges and your the connections in your roads kind of like expanding and contracting stuff. So,
huh,
I thought that's kind of a neat idea. So.
that's cool. Yeah.
So, and the big thing that people talk a lot about that
Mhm.
I'm not sure how much has actually been achieved is there's this thing called X-ray crystallography, where
Mhm.
you take a protein that forms crystals, and then you can use X-ray crystallography by shining like X-rays through it and seeing like the dispersion pattern, and then
Yeah.
you can actually figure out where each atom is in terms of that protein. Um, but you need a big enough uh, piece of the crystallized protein to be able to do that. And there's some thoughts that being able to kind of do that in space would allow for you to get bigger crystals. But it's kind of interesting that it's kind of been something that's been talked about, but yet, there's really no uh, I think it's still something that um, I don't know enough about to talk about myself. So
Mm, cool.
anyway,
Yeah, it sounds like, yeah, I think before this discussion, I was definitely kind of like not, I mean, it's not something that I think about day to day, like space exploration. And I think, yeah, I guess it doesn't seem like there has been that much like current events or like news that talk about it in the last decade or so. Although it might just be because I cut it on the news. Um, but yeah, I think like things like going to the moon or exploring space really like ignites people's imaginations, like adults or children. I think there's a lot, like there's so much out there that it seems like very unlikely that we wouldn't learn something. And it seems like we've already learned quite a bit about like like you said, things about like how to like how people are affected by um like different levels of like gravity or like space conditions, like radiation, and maybe like there's faster aging, or like slower aging, and like certain things like exercise, or certain forms of exercise could help us live our lives. So yeah, I don't have enough, I haven't thought about all these things enough to have like coherent thoughts about them, but it does sound like so far we've already learned things from being in space that could help us with our lives here on Earth, human lives in general, wherever it is. And I think that's super cool. Uh, it would be awesome if we could learn more things. But yeah, sometimes to learn about life on Earth or human life, um, it could be good to, how do I put this? Like to learn about living our own lives, it could be useful to think about like, what if we take away everything that we know to be true? Like, how does the human body not in that environment? Like the absence of things can, I guess, similar. The absence of things can teach us about their importance. or I don't know, things along those lines.
It kind of reminds me of this concept called zero dollar zero based budgeting. So
Mhm.
in a lot of organizations, generally people take the budget from last year, add a growth factor, and that becomes like post budget for the new year. But then
Mhm.
you have like this other idea called zero-based budgeting, where you start out with like $0, and you're like, okay, what do I need to add specifically? So it's like you could do that with in your
Yes.
example, instead of just taking like the predominant environment that we live in. We could start out, okay,
Yeah.
say we're starting from scratch. What's like the minimum that we put in, and what would be the most healthiest and everything?
Mm. Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, it seems like it's about time for us to like go back out there. Maybe. Um,
And
yeah.
we're sending 4 astronauts, including the first Canadian around the moon next year. First woman, too. And first person of
Oh,
color.
there's 4 people.
4 people, yeah, next
Oh,
year
cool.
around
Is
the
it
moon.
around around the moon?
Yeah, they'll go around the moon and come back. So
Are
they
they going
won't
to
be
step
landing just yet.
on the Oh, okay.
They won't step on the
That's
moon, no.
interesting.
But yeah, they're kind of doing this
Is
phased
it like
approach to testing out the system. Oh, say again.
what is the system that they're testing? What
Well,
I was just gonna say, like,
so like oh, like the capsule and the rocket to take them there, making sure that they can go and come back at least safely without
uh,
just to validate that works out well.
right. That's cool. Yeah, I think a very long time ago when I was a kid, I took some class about space and they were talking about ways to like minimize fuel use on trips to the moon. I think one of them was like there's some like slingshot. I don't know if this is what they're doing, but there's some sort of slingshot mechanism. I'm probably butchering the science behind this, but it's like you go to the moon and then because of like the gravitational pull, like you get sent into orbit and then you can use that to like propel you back or something. I don't know if that's what they're doing.
Like we sent out these probes to look at Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, and they used a slingshot maneuver to kind of accelerate and change their trajectories so that they could see all those planets. But I'm not sure how that would work with the moon. I mean, they definitely are like Artemis 2, the flight for next year. They're actually not going to get into orbit around the moon. They're actually just going to go around the moon and come directly back. So it's called like I think a free return trajectory, where you've like done it so you don't slow down enough that the moon actually captures you, but you're going
Mm,
fast enough that you'll come directly out of orbit. So
mm.
that's kind of interesting. But yeah, definitely looking
That's
forward to that next year. That's going to be huge to have humans out there. And
that's scary.
one of the things that the Apollo deniers say is that how could humans go past these radiation belts that are around the Earth? So this
Mhm.
to kind of uh, provide some proof that it's possible to do that. So
Mm,
yeah,
that's cool. Yeah.
but if you could, would you take a trip to space?
I would have to look at the health, what how healthy or unhealthy it is first because of the radiation. Um, but or like the risks and such. Uh, because I don't know. But if it's safe enough, and I think I would knock off a few years of my life. Like I would knock off like up to maybe 3 years off my life for a trip into space, just for the experience. If it was a free trip, um, I think I'm not fully trained enough to be an astronaut, but it sounds intriguing. I think the just like the image of being in a space shuttle and looking out and seeing darkness all around you, and even more so like seeing all of Earth away from you and you're not on Earth, which is like everything we know, and like everything to be home is it's like awe-inspiring, or like makes you feel like massive scale, the whole like massive scale of things, or like just gives you like a interesting feeling, like or like yeah, it's hard to put it into words. I think watching space movies and seeing images of the Earth floating in space kind of give that feeling too. But I think being in person, kind of like at the start of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, when like Arthur Dent is like in space and his entire world is gone. He's like, huh, that was like my entire world, and now I'm still here, but my world is gone. It's like interesting feeling. I don't know if that makes any sense, but but I don't know.
Absolutely.
I don't know if that would like terrify me or like inspire me. So yeah.
Well, Mandy, that's pretty much all the questions I had for you. Did you have any questions for me or anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, sure. Would you want to go to the moon or take us outside of Earth if you could?
Yeah, I think I'd like to go to Mars. I live my final days on
Mars.
Mars, helping humanity expand beyond Earth. I think that would be kind of like a
Oh,
worthwhile thing.
have you seen the
What was it again?
Jennifer Lawrence Passenger, like that movie about like Jennifer
Oh,
with Jennifer Lawrence
Passenger.
and
I have not seen that. I have not seen that. That's the one where they're all
oh, okay, I don't
asleep
want
and
to
they're on
spoil it
this
for you.
long trip, and then he
Yeah.
causes her to wake up in the middle, and then but I know
Oh,
I
that's
haven't
a
seen it
spoiler.
yet.
Okay, I'm gonna spoil it for you, but you already know. Yeah, and then like she gets like when she realizes that she has to like spend her entire life building the future for humanity and like all the people that are going to colonize like I think where are they going again? They are going to another planet, right? Um, but
Yeah,
they
I
went
think a different star system.
yeah, and then she was supposed to be able to like live a whole life there, but instead all she can do is like pave the way the rest of the people in humanity to live there. Like I think the moment I learned that her entire life is like as she expected it was like over in a sense was like chilling to me. Um, but yeah, out of curiosity, would that be fulfilling for you if like your whole life was like on the planet and maybe you were by
On a
yourself,
starship.
but you knew that it would pave the
I
way?
don't think. I think that'd be really difficult. People
Yeah.
need people.
Yeah.
People need people. I think I need at least like 100 people to be sane. I think any less than that, it just would be too confining. But 100 people might be enough, assuming that they're not all against me. That might be overwhelming.
Yeah, so like a colony on Mars with like 100 people, like all trying, like
Yeah,
scientists
100 people.
trying to. Oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah, of course, trying to find a colony here on Earth with 100 people, I think would be really challenging too. Just the personalities and uh, kind of expectations people have of each other and all
Right.
that good stuff.
That's a good point.
So,
Yeah. Hmm, cool. Yeah, that reminds me of like the that little town that they had in Oppenheimer, if you've seen it, that they built at Los
I've seen
Alamos.
that. Yeah, I saw Oppenheimer. Yeah. So did you like it?
Cool. I loved it. Yeah.
Uh,
I thought it really thought-provoking, but also terrifying as well. So
It
it
is.
was
I mean, yeah.
yeah,
We
but
discovered a nuclear bomb before we discovered how they put things in orbit, which is kind of amazing.
discover how to destroy the Earth before we learn what we can do to survive afterward. Kind of unfortunate. But yeah, hopefully space exploration is the answer. I think like that movie left me terrified about like nuclear warfare and like the end of humanity. And if we can diversify, I think that would be great. Or if at least we can learn more about ways that humanity can survive and what more ways that we can survive as opposed to researching ways that we can destroy ourselves, it'll become more balanced. So this is hopefully a step in the right direction. Yeah.
I hope so. Well, Mandy, I better let you go. Actually, I need to um, probably turn in for the day.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for talking to me for my project, and it was so good to get to hear your thoughts.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for reaching out. It was interesting hearing about space more. I think I don't usually think about it often, so it was like a nice chance to think about like issues that are not like immediately relevant to my like daily life and stuff. Usually I just hear about things like this in the news, like, oh, that's cool, but I think it's less personal. So yeah, thank you for sharing your
Well,
information.
anytime you want to talk more, I'm always one phone call away.
Okay, awesome. Thanks. Yeah, and Zeke probably will be available if you need the interview with someone else as well. Um,
Yeah, no, that'd be fantastic. That'd be fantastic. I definitely keep him on my list. So,
okay. Yeah,
well, you have a good night and hope to talk again soon.
yeah, thank you. Good night.
Bye bye.